Okay, so Lord O'Donnell, can you name one lesson or idea from abroad that's helped you or your colleagues?
Yes, I would go back to the time when I was First Secretary at the Embassy in Washington. And this was in the 80s, and it was the start of workfare. It's a basic example of active labour market policies to try and get people back into jobs. It was a good example because it was a new area, and it was also an example of something that wasn't done at central government level. This was done state by state. So places like Wisconsin were crucial to visit. I think it's a really good lesson to civil servants to look not just at what central governments are doing, but what states and provinces are doing around the world.
Great, thank you. Are there any projects or innovations from this country that might be valuable to your peers overseas?
Oh, I'd pick up three key ones. First, the so-called nudge unit, the behavioural insights team. And I think every country should set one of those up. Secondly, the emphasis that Prime Minister David Cameron put on measuring well-being, and our official National Statistics Office taking that up, that was crucial. And thirdly, the What Works centres, which basically bring together all the evidence in areas like education, health and crime to provide decision makers, ministers, with information about what actually works, what the evidence tells you about the policies that are successful and the ones that aren't.
Thank you. How can we improve the ways in which senior public officials work with and learn from their colleagues overseas?
Well, I think the Global Government Forum is a classic example of the way forward. We need to make it easier for civil servants to pick up on examples, things that work and things that don't work around the world. Like I say, not just central government, but local governments as well. And that means that we should do this in a way that doesn't require people to be travelling all the time, because there isn't the money in public budgets for lots and lots of conferences around the world. We need to make it easy and simple for people to learn from the experience of others. And that means web-based learning in large part.
Yeah. What are the biggest global challenges within public services over the next few years?
Well, I think all public services are having to face the fact that in the developed world there's been a slowdown in growth. The new normal is slower GDP growth rates, productivity seems to be stagnating, world trade growth that used to be growing much faster for a given level of GDP seems to be growing at about the same rate as GDP. So that creates some problems. Resources are going to be harder to come by, which is going to mean that if there's less growth about, people are going to care even more about the distribution of that growth. And it looks like the proceeds of that growth are being spread not very evenly. The top 1% are getting an enormous amount. So dealing with inequalities, dealing with the productivity slowdown, and dealing with the fact that I think people are beginning to realise they're living longer. It's not just about work and income, it's about having fulfilling, satisfying lives. And that's why we come back to this issue of well-being.
Thank you. And what's your favourite book?
I have to say Danny Kahneman's The Work, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow has been a really important influence for me on the behavioural side. At the moment I'm reading Exposure by Michael Woodford, which is great fun. And I'm halfway through a new book, which isn't out yet, by Carol Graham called Happiness for All, which I think will try to explain the relationship between well-being and the growth of very strange politics, the emergence of people like Trump in the US, and what that tells us about not just how society is changing, but how policies need to respond.
Lord O'Donnell, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.